Hmm. So, I think I've come to believe that the Russians are believing their own propaganda. That this whole, I mean, I'm hearing the term holy war and shit thrown around. Um, I mean, it sounds so desperate. Desperate. That's what it sounds like. They're just, what I'm hearing and what I'm reading is, they fucked up. They knew they fucked up, and they know they've lost everything already. They've lost. I mean, they've been bitch slapped in front of the world by Ukraine, and Ukraine has shown the world how fierce they can be to fight for freedom. That doesn't bode well for totalitarian countries. I think they believe their own bullshit because they're gonna. Oh, this big offensive is coming. You know what? When I think of a Russian offensive, I'm not kidding you. Do you know what I think it is? I just think it is just a mass opportunity to destroy Russian equipment. That's what I think is going to happen. If you line up all your Russian vehicles and the Ukrainians get an F-16 and they drop two or three sensor fused weapons, that whole a 5 mile strip is gone. They haven't faced any kind of this Russian propaganda show that I'm watching. He's basically talking about, one guy's telling him, don't fool yourself. The Ukrainians are going to get Western weapons. They're going to be learning on them immediately. Look what they've done with HIMARS. And the other guy was like, kind of poo-pooing what the HIMARS, the importance and how they're shooting them down and this kind of thing. And it just sounds like someone trying to convince themselves. It's really sad. And this whole offensive that's coming, I just see that as an opportunity. I'm not, from what I've seen from Ukraine, once they get Bradleys and some decent armor, um, yeah, I mean, we had what, 14 HIMARS hit the country, and all of a sudden the war's turned around. They can't stop the all of the incoming HIMARS. They've shot down a few, but they haven't had to go against ATACMS. That's a maneuvering missile. It's not. It doesn't take a ballistic trajectory. Neither does HIMARS. It turns. Uh, but the ATACMS is a maneuvering. That thing is like this, man. That thing. You'll see it coming down like this, and then it'll go, and it'll straighten up like that to gain distance, and then it'll point itself at the target, and then it spins up and it spits out all those grenades. The Russians haven't seen any kind of Western technology yet. We gave them a very old missile system that just happens to be accurate. Um, we have to thank Elon Musk for letting the Ukrainians access their system, but I'm sure it's not being done for free. And that's all it took to stop the Russians. And now they're resorting to stalling for time with human bodies. So we recruit 40,000 prisoners from all over our country. We send them out there just to buy time. They die, we get time to try to form this new offensive. And what I see happening is the same thing. All of their best shit's already been blown up. You can see, they've shown pictures of their storage yards are basically devoid of operating vehicles. Maybe 10 to 25% functional. And all they are is targets. So, in Iraq, they were still 1,800 meters out of range for the Abrams, and these guys were popping the tops off of Iraqi tanks that were dug in, and all they could see was these little heads, little, like he said, basketball side things popping up, and that way they knew that was the commanders. And these guys are so far out of range. Those T-72s didn't have a chance to shoot at the Abrams, and they were blowing turrets off. It's not a fair fight. And if you get the Bradley in there with anti-personnel grenades, basically that count the number of times they're spinning and then explode like a hand grenade, throwing shrapnel everywhere, people in trenches won't be safe. The Bradleys know that's nothing to mess around with. That's a up against armor of its same type and size. Of course, I think the Bradley's probably one of the few that have that type of aluminum armor, but still, that gun, that Bushmaster's a bad boy. I don't see. I see the Russians just not comprehending because they must be believing their own propaganda. Most from what I understand, people are fleeing the country in vast numbers, getting the fuck out. They're buying property everywhere else. They're getting out. They're terrified of what could happen, especially when if Russia loses the war. So, yeah. I don't know. This is it's disturbing for me because I see all those people dying for nothing. Vladimir Putin tomorrow could say, "Okay, fuck it, it's over. We shouldn't have attacked your country. Here's Crimea back. Yeah, we've been stirring shit up in your." I remember this all. A decade and a half ago, easy. You had 18 years ago. You had Russians there in green outfits, and they called them army men because they didn't have any insignias, but they were decked out green military Russian soldiers. And they were the ones that started it's spelt with an R, spelt with a Q, spelt with an R, and this neighbor would snipe that neighbor, this neighbor would snipe, and they were the ones doing it, and they divided the country. It wasn't hard for them to do when you control all of the media sources. I think they're believing their own stories. That's what I think. They haven't come up against the technology we could throw at them. Not even close to the technology we could throw at them. What about B-52s with, SDBs that are going to glide 50 miles and take out targets with precision? I mean, how many SDBs can you get in a B-52? I know it has to be in excess of 1,000. I wonder if they have a rack for that many, like the smart racks that are in the B-1. Okay, I'm gonna go back and watch this and see what else. It doesn't make sense. I think they're believing their own shit. That these guys are getting so desperate on the news, and the things they're saying is they're convincing the Russian public that Americans are Nazis and America's fighting them, and it's like, no, Putin invaded a peaceful country who formed a democracy. He didn't like it. He wanted it to stop, and he tried to do the same thing he did in Crimea, and he fucked up. The Ukrainians said, no, we don't want to be a part of Russia, and that's it. And now Putin is the only one that can stop it. Or he's going to get beat, and he doesn't want to do that. But I think sooner or later, like I said, he's going to fall down on an elevator shaft onto some bullets because the brain trust there in Russia knows exactly what's being done, okay? I don't think they believe for 1 second what's being said in these propaganda shows. But the general public, I've seen people asking questions, what do you think? And there are Russians that are like, yes, we're winning, and the Nazis are there, and the Americans are Nazis, and NATO's all Nazis, and Russia's fighting all those countries at the same time. And I'm thinking, you don't have B-52s flying over your house, dropping JDAMs. You attacked Ukraine. You're not having your cities leveled like in Ukraine. So they absolutely believe it, okay? But the upper echelons, no, they don't believe it. They're just trying to keep the population in a position where they're not going to start to say, okay, enough is enough. But the brain drain and the amount of money that's leaving the country, all of the talent is leaving. And I just see that this could be the end of Russia as we know it. That it'll take them. I don't know if they can even recover from this and still be the same Russia. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they can do. I don't think it'd be like the Soviet Union all over again. That maybe, they'll get broken up into other territories. I don't know. I can't. That's starting to get out of my league for sure. You never know what's going to happen that way. Yeah. See, Putin could stop it tomorrow. He could just say, "Okay, that's it. Everybody back home." He could do that right now, tomorrow, and maybe save his country and have everybody come back. But one man's pride and ego refuses to be a loser in his last days. He wants to go out a winner. And can he pull it off without, somebody dropping a bowling ball on his head? I don't know. I think that is there's a much higher probability of that happening now than it was, say, 6 months ago. That's for damn sure.